Hello everyone and a very good evening. I'm Sarika Shah and I'm a practicing special educator. Today is a very special day for me for two reasons. A, because I consider myself honored to be in conversation with Dr. Avinash de Sousa. And B, I got an opportunity to be a part of this event for a cause that is very dear to me. So before I invite Dr. de Sousa, I would like to quickly share with you how this hour is going to go. Our team has collected questions from parents and professionals, and we have picked the most relevant, pressing questions, which I'll be asking to Sir. However, if you think you still have questions that are unanswered, kindly use the chat box to post it. Depending on the time available, we'll try to address as many questions as we can. Requesting you all to stay on mute and try to be on cameras for a better experience. Now let's begin our evening. Dr. de Sousa needs no introduction, but since it's customary, let me say a few lines about him. Dr. Avinash de Sousa is a consultant psychiatrist and founder trustee of de Sousa Foundation, Mumbai. He's been working with special children for the past 22 years, and he has keen interest in issues that concern children and adults with developmental disabilities. On that note, I welcome Dr. de Sousa.
Yeah, good evening.
Sir, so shall we start right away? Okay. So everybody, if you can be on camera, that would be great. And if you think it's not possible, absolutely fine with us. Okay. So sir, to start with the first question, the most key question that I was thinking of was, so what do you think? Should we look at ASD or autism spectrum disorder as a disorder or a personality type?
Well, over the years, I think the last 2 decades that, I've been working with children with autism and adolescents with autism and adults with autism, it has always, made me feel that, are we psychopathologizing or, putting into a disorder category, a group of individuals who many a times may not really have major symptoms. When I say major symptoms, meaning they may not be depressed or they may not be anxious or they may not be violent or they may not be aggressive, but they have a way of thinking and functioning which is different. They probably speak differently, communicate differently, work differently. They have some mannerisms, some behavioral issues which I think are very common in many children. We've seen them also, but the whole issue here is that I whether we're really able to uh, 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 think of them as a disorder, because I think what happens is when we put that as a disorder, very often we then end up classifying them as having what we call a major psychiatric illness. So I always feel that you might say it's a developmental disability, but at the end of the day, under disorder classifications, it goes into a psychiatric illness. So one of the things which I always feel is that if you put them, as a personality disorder, it's a little better, because then it becomes far more easier to look at them as individuals rather than them look at them as individuals with pathology. So I think that's something which even school teachers then can probably empathize with and look at differently. And why look at them as children who have a problem? I have one small issue here now. Someone has sent me a link with 500 people just as we have started this. I don't know what to do, but I think what we'll do is we'll go with this. We'll record it and send the recording to them. Let's not leave the continuity now.
Yes, sir. I think that's a great suggestion. We'll continue with this. Okay, great, sir. So let's go for the next question that we have. So all these questions are coming from parents, sir. So so they want to know, sir, why do they find it difficult to connect with people, whereas they easily connect with inanimate objects? Many a times even have this obsession. So as parents, they're really confused.
Okay. Well, I think what happens is that shapes interest children, and color interest children. So, and I always remember very early in my work with autism, I had a mother that came to me and said that the child doesn't like chapatis, and whatever you do, he doesn't eat chapatis. And we don't make rice in our house, so it's very difficult to feed him rice and whatever. And so I said, is there something in the atta he doesn't like? Is there something in the food he doesn't like? And so I just walked up to the child and I told him कि आप चपाती क्यों नहीं खाते हो? And he said, चपाती गोल है, मुझे गोल चीजें पसंद नहीं है. This is what he said. So I told him that I told the mother उसको bread दो, वो bread खाएगा. And she bought a loaf of bread and he ate the bread because he said it's square. So he didn't even look at it as food. He was more concerned with the shape of what it was. There was another child who said chapati brown hai, main brown cheeze nahi pasand karta. So I told the mother, put beetroot, put palak, put some color, make it orange, make it uh, uh, red, make it pink, and the child ate the same thing, but just because the color changed. So we very often have to think uh, like children who are on the spectrum. And what's very important is um, when we look at this, it so happens that uh, they do have this interest in animate objects, because I think the inanimate objects don't challenge them. So they can say what they want, do what they want, unlike in a social communication pattern setting where they get a little scared because they don't know what will be the response from the person in front. Also, I think the shape, color, texture of the object is what interests them. So some might like harder objects, someone likes softer objects, depending on their interest. And last but not the least, they always like to have something to cling on to. And I think an
Right.
object for them is easier to hold onto than a person.
True. True. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It definitely makes sense. Being with being with this population, you can see that it's the right thing. That's they're so fascinated with shapes. Okay, so moving on to the next question. Okay, the next question the parents want to know is, when faced with a stressful situation, their behavior is unpredictable and sometimes unmanageable. Like as they are unable to express what is bothering them, it becomes very difficult for the primary caretaker to provide any kind of support. So, can you please suggest any coping mechanism for the primary caregiver?
Well, in India, I'll tell you, caregiving is a very stressful job, irrespective whether you're looking after a physically ill patient, whether you're looking after a child or an adolescent with autism, or whether you're looking after a patient who has any other mental illness. The whole reason is that invariably there are only one or a maximum of two caregivers, per children. And the entire onus is on the caregiver, and the caregiver has multiple roles. So the caregiver is a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, multiple roles. A friend has to work, post working manage this, or during work, from work manage this. So there's a work from home caregiver. So you're multiple things. The caregiver is also the earning member at times. So I think the stress comes in there. But what I tell parents of children with autism is that if you can get groups of 2 or 3 parents to just form small groups, and they can take the responsibility of probably managing maybe 2 children together, may not be a large group of children because space is a constraint and multiple things are there. But if 2 children with autism spectrum can be looked after, maybe for a few hours, or some for maybe 6-8 hours by one parent, the other parent can get a breather to do all that he or she needs to do. And even maybe the couple can go out and see a movie, or maybe the couple could go out for dinner, or even go out for a small half-day outing. I mean, those are things which I think the parents of the children need. There is no doubt on that front. And but this can only happen if parents sort of coalesce and agree to help each other in this way. And very often stress does occur when you're lonely. Stress does occur when you're away. So you either then need to have a group of friends with whom you can interact. So I think now in this online era, you can have a group of friends online with whom you interact. So that's one. Little bit of yoga, if possible, is something that could help. Uh, of course, if you feel you yourself are developing stress, anxiety, you need to talk to a counselor. I mean, there is no shame in talking to a counselor. You may feel, how is it that I'm only parenting a child? How can I develop this? It's very important that this can happen. And I feel at times even the child needs to be a little away from the parent. I'm not saying always, but what happens is that too much of the parent and child together, they can both sort of get to each other. They both need that little breathing space away from each other at times. And now, of course, in COVID, it's all the more been troublesome because the child is at home the whole day. Earlier, when the child would be off to school, maybe for 4 hours or 3 hours or 2 hours, or even for that matter, half a day, that breathing space would be there for the parent, which isn't sort of available now. So all the more it's more difficult, and the child may not be able to express what he's going through at times.
Yes,
So
that's what
it gets
happens,
it
sir.
gets all the more difficult.
Right. So, sir, I think parents wanted to know a little bit more about this. So this is what you said for the parents, which is a wonderful idea, that they can be, in group of 2, 3. Now they also want to know that in the same situation, what could be the coping mechanism offered to the child?
Well, I think one of the things that can be offered to the child is, the child has to sort of develop into maybe forming small groups with other children who the child is comfortable with. So a social outing for the child. The child has to get used to multiple caregivers. So maybe other relatives could chip in. Maybe you could have people who come in for an hour or 2 hours a week. So those kind of, so that sort of helps the child because he gets used to multiple caregivers. The child also needs to have a very good routine as far as his sleep cycle goes, because I think that plays a very big role when it comes to caregiving also. So if the child is going to sleep regularly between this time and this time, a lot of activities could be thought of or planned of, or you could plan your whole day based on that. I think the other most important facet is that we also need to understand that uh, uh, the child sometimes, now if uh, of course post COVID schools open, the school itself is a coping mechanism for the child because the child meets different people. It's only now in the current scenario that we are facing a bit of an issue, but otherwise I think slowly once schools open, that coping would happen naturally.
Right, sir. So, they also have a structure that goes well, which is so true for an autism person with autism. Okay. So we'll move to the next question. I think it definitely covered all the, queries that parents had. The next question, sir, is, as we are aware, because of autism, children find it difficult to socialize. Though we know that we can take them to play areas or give them other opportunities of socializing. However, neurotypical children find it difficult to mingle with our children. And they're not wrong, because most of the times it can be behavior issues from our children, like screaming, pushing, or even not verbalizing. So the neurotypical children, they don't know what to do. But all said and done, our kids are still left aside without socializing. So what parents want to know, sir, that what would you suggest? How can we get our children to socialize?
Well, I think, amongst the children who the child meets, there will be some children who he's comfortable with and some who he's not comfortable with. So I always tell the parents, try and get him to come to the children who he's comfortable with. And maybe in groups of 1 or 2, minor socializations can happen, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes to start with. If you suddenly put him with some new people for an hour, it may stress him out. So start with minor socializations till they probably get used to the fact that, okay, these are 2 people. Let what I call rooming in happen. Let those children come home. Let the child go to their house, even if it is for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Let him get used to seeing them every day first, before you even think of a formal socialization, because he has to get used to having those people around in what I call the child's peri-personal space, the space around him. He has to, get used to seeing that these people exist in this domain, because he's only seen his mom, his dad, maybe the maid servant. So for him, these are new people. So he gets flustered. Once he sees them for around 10 days regularly, his reactions to them reduce. Then maybe them being for a longer time, and then we can look at, socialization based on that. But he has to first be comfortable with them being around. That's something which is very important, and we have to keep trying to make our child socialize. We cannot really make him socialize like us, but we have to, sort of try.
Right. And sir, what you said about rooming in is so important. Take smaller chunks, 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. Let the child be, get familiarized with that small group of people. So yeah.
See, it can even happen, that the new children come, the child who has autism just screams. He may not socialize because he doesn't like these people or he's not used to them. It's fine. Let him scream for 5 minutes, it doesn't matter, but let him get used to the fact that these people are going to be around. Very often if he starts screaming, I know parents will say, nahi, nahi, chalo, you go, they'll send away the other children. Don't do that. Let those other children also be there. They have to get used to his reactions also. It's very important. They can't, be told to go away because you don't want to show them maybe a little bad side of, this child. Well, they have to get used to his behaviors. So they have to understand, because probably tomorrow, if he's with them, he may scream, but they have to not learn how to react and how not to react. So that's something which, is very important. And similarly, you may have a child with the autistic spectrum who may touch the other child, on the face or on the hand, and the other children have to get a little comfortable with that if socialization has to happen. So all these things will take their own time.
Right. So it's a mutual thing. As much as we need to train the child in the spectrum, at the same time, it's our responsibility to educate a neurotypical child of his age to accept autism the way it is.
Yeah.
Right. Great, sir. So moving on to the next question. A parent says, she has actually quoted with the example. So she says, my child continuously uses the same phrases, every day when triggered by the same stimulus. So the stimulus could be, maid comes, and then the child might say, Tahira aunty will come and do utensils. Before start of remedial session, she might say, after XY teacher class, then finish. Whenever she hears any baby cry, she has to say, Mama will take care of baby. So the mother says that though we understand it's a trait, to all this, she needs an acknowledgement from me, like a simple or a nod. Till then, she wants to, keep on repeating. So she says, though I know that our group of children have the trait of verbal repetitions, is there any way we can teach to control it?
Well, I think, one of the things is, we also have to develop repetitions with regard to our instructions, that, the child has to be told, ek hi baar bolna hai, and it'll happen. It'll take time. It'll take even 2 months maybe. But, we have to keep telling the child, ek hi baar bolna hai, baar nahi bolna hai. And the child, if he's repeating particularly, you just take your hand and put it on the lip of the child and tell him, no, he's not supposed to repeat. Very often we end up, bash, stroke, shout, and all that. That doesn't really work. I always say the child has to understand that finger on the lip means he's not supposed to repeat. So the moment he, keeps repeating again and again, you just take your finger and say, shh, and you tell him, aap bar nahi bologe, and he has to realize. And it'll take time. It'll take around 15 days for the child for that instruction to sink in. But it will sink in, finally, and he'll realize. And you have many children who will, it's very sweet. They repeat and then they themselves say, nahi bolna, and they get into that habit. So it will happen. So, but it will sink in, over time.
Right. And then, they just need to learn from, we have to force them to learn from the environment. It's not.
I will tell you a funny story about this. We had a child who was repeating, and we told the parents that, do this, and they did it. And the thing is that they took him to a party and they told him, ki good morning bolo, and he said, bol diya, ek hi baar bol diya, I will not say it again and again, and so then the next person came, he refused to say good morning, so they told me, now what do we do in this situation, so I said, now we'll have to tell him ki good morning bol sakte, but then I said, pura din good morning bolte rahega, so it shouldn't, affect again. So these are sweet things that happen, but they happen. So because they took him for the first time, so he said good morning. Then after that he realized I've said it 5 times. So when that 5th auntie came, he says nahi bolega, he said ek hi baar bolna hai. And they said hello bolo, then hello bhi ek hi baar bola. So then what other greetings, they got confused ki abhi usko kya bulwayenge. So that sometimes causes, a problem also for the parents.
Right, sir. But that's a story I think everybody will remember. Could be a takeaway for them. Okay, moving on to the next question, sir. So now we are, a mother says that during the lockdown, now this is very specific to lockdown, and we all know that lockdown brought a lot of ups and downs for our kids. So this mother has this question, sir. She says that during the lockdown, she noticed her son developing various type of fears, like fear of darkness, fear of sounds at night, need of light even during the daytime, etc. Now, this kind of fear began during lockdown. it immensely affects the night sleep and sleeping at odd hours during the day. For example, the child will stay awake at night with lights on and sleeps from 8 a.m. in the morning till late in the day. So her question is, how can we deal with sudden fears that grip our children?
Well, it's very difficult sometimes in children with ASD that we don't realize, what is the cause of fear. It could be a loud sound, it could be something they hear, it could be anything. And particularly if the sleep-wake cycle is disturbed, I always say that, we need to get into this whole act where the person probably has to, we have to work towards changing that sleep-wake cycle. So if it means that a child is even kept a little awake forcibly for a day, so that he gets into that night mode of sleeping, that may have to be done. Sometimes we do use melatonin as a medication in some children to sort of get the sleep cycle back on track. But more importantly, it will be behavioral. So we keep the curtains open. I know the light is on, but we still keep the curtains open and make them understand that it's day, and you primarily sleep at night, and try and put them to bed early in the evening. Maybe keep them awake the whole day, put them to bed early by around 5 p.m., then maybe the next day 6:30, then 7. And behaviorally, then we try to sort of get them into that night sleep mode. So this transition would also take a week or 10 days from behavioral perspective. Sometimes it may not happen, and if it doesn't happen, then sometimes then medication is the only alternative we have from a sleep perspective.
Right. So what I understand, sir, is first parents should try behavioral modifications. And if it doesn't work, then that's the time when they can take medicinal help as well. Right? Perfect. Okay, sir. Moving on to the next question then. So here now we're moving to the teenager side. This mother says, uh, she's a mother of a teenager, and she says, teenagers with autism really realize at some level that they are different and are kept out of social groups, do not understand how to integrate, and many fall into depression. How can one build self-esteem, self-confidence, and the self-belief that they can overcome problems? So this made me think if you can tell us more about the common mental health issues an individual with autism can face through, or his or her journey as a child, a teenager, and an adult. What can parents do to prevent or deal with such issues, sir?
Well, I classify the mental health issues into two groups. One is very serious mental health issues, and the other is psychosocial mental health issues. So when I mean psychosocial mental health issues, it includes being bullied a bit, being left out, of a group, not being allowed, seeing that other teenagers have a girlfriend, they don't have a girlfriend, seeing that other teenagers go out on Saturday, they don't go out on Saturday. I mean, these are the things that they probably observe. Other teenagers sit in a cafe, they don't sit in a cafe. I mean, those are the things that they probably observe. So that's one. Two, they also realize physically they're different. They also realize socially they're different. They also do not know how to interact socially with the opposite gender. So that also sometimes makes them feel a little inadequate in many ways. So that those are the minor issues. The major issues are that some of them may feel anxious, some of them may feel a little depressed, they may feel low, they may cry, they may feel upset, they may get aggressive. So these are the major mental health issues that we see. But what people have to very importantly understand is that just because children with ASD are not probably very social, or they are not very emotional, it doesn't mean that they do not develop self-esteem issues. They do. It doesn't mean, I had a mother who told me, he's hardly emotional. How can you say he's depressed? And I always said, the thing is, he doesn't know he has depression, but he has depression. And he probably understands that there's something wrong, and he's not able to tell you what it is. So he's not able to even tell you that I'm afraid, because he doesn't know how to label that emotion. But he has the physical body, the brain, and all the biological characteristics needed to understand that, to sort of experience that emotion. So he can feel hurt. I mean, I always tell parents, don't think that a child with ASD is someone who is emotionally cold. They're not emotionally cold. They are just emotionally unexpressive. They can get a little numb at times, but they're emotionally unexpressive. It doesn't mean that they don't feel or perceive or understand, what's happening. there will always be a few people who they are attached to. It will not be that they are attached to a lot of people. So I mean, I will tell you, there was a child I met long back in uh, a school for children with autism. I used to go there in the early part of my career. This was at Jai Vakil. I used to go there in the early part of my career, spend time with children. They used to have a hostel at that time. So, I would spend time with the bigger children, and I would play with them. I was freer at that time. So I had time. I would play with them, be with them for a few hours, and, come back. And this was in the afternoons. And one fine day, we had this one child with autism who came with a very big chocolate and gave it to me. And the teacher said he never shares anything, with anyone. So if he's giving you something, means, you've really been able to sort of reach out to him. And I said, I don't think I've done much except play with him. So maybe he just felt that, I was able to connect in some way. So he gave me a chocolate, and he would speak. So I asked him, is this for me? He said, yes, it's for me. And he even asked me, so he said, but their understanding of emotions is very limited. So I asked him, why are you giving it to me? So he said, you play with us, so you're my friend, so I'm giving it to you. And my uncle had brought this for me, so I'm giving it to you. And so I put it in my pocket, and I was walking away, and he said, don't eat it. So I said, why? He said it'll finish, then I don't have another one to give you, after that. So I said,
Wow.
so the very often abstract concepts are not very well formed, with them. So these are things which, make you realize that their world is different. You have to think, as I always tell a lot of special educators, we have to learn to think autistic at times. Then only you will probably try to think from his perspective. Now I'll give you another example, because I want to share this. I remember many a times, we get complaints in schools that, the child with autism has probably touched a girl inappropriately, or a girl has touched a boy inappropriately. And they very often, come to us and complain. And I always tell them that, see, it may not necessarily mean that the child had anything sexual in his head when he did it. Don't think we perceive that as sexual. The child may not have anything sexual in his head. And I remember a child who went and touched another girl on the chest, and uh, there was a big hula hoo about it. And the boy was brought to me, and they said he need medication and he need treatment, and it was a one-off incident. So I said, have we ever bothered to ask him why did he do it? I said, ask him, why did you do it? And he said that, I just felt that, my chest is thin, her chest is big, and she's probably hiding something in her chest. Now this is autistic thinking. We felt he has touched the breast, it is wrong, it is, improper, or it was this thing. But he never thought of it as anything sexual, for that matter. He said, I thought she's hiding something and running away. So I went and, touched it. And then I asked him, I said, would you do it again? He says, no. He was very clear he won't do it again, because obviously he was reprimanded a lot. But so we have to understand from their perspective at times.
So true, sir. Their perspective is so important. And while you were sharing stories from your life, I could see, I could see all my kids. And that's what I wonder. Why do they say that they don't have emotion? They don't, they are what you exactly said, that they cannot express their emotions, but they are highly emotional people and they understand everything. So thanks for these stories, sir.
There are some audience questions also. I think, you could
Yes,
just,
sir.
in the chat
Yes,
box.
sir. Yeah. So right now, it is something different to, so one parent is asking that I need guidance on how to get over a child from extreme animal fear, be dogs, cats, or even cow. The child gets super anxious and even scream loud when a dog passes by.
Well, I think what's very important is we need to find out in what way is the animal fear hampering the child. So, so if probably the child is not going to go in for, say, animal-based therapy or something because of the animal fear, fine. I mean, let him. I always say, whenever we treat fears, it's very important to understand how the fear is hampering daily life. So a lot of us are afraid of lizards and cockroaches and this and that, but it doesn't hamper our daily life. So we really don't, bother about getting ourselves treated for that fear. We all may be afraid of dogs and cats and animals, but we don't get ourselves treated for that fear, because we're not seeing a dog every day or a cat every day. But the whole issue here is, yes, if we were afraid of going by lift and we stayed on the 10th floor, we would want to, get rid of that fear. Or if we were afraid of going by auto and we had to go by auto for work every day, there was no bus or train, we would be wanting to get rid of that fear soon. So when the parent has asked about animal fear, my two questions are: A, do you need to really get rid of that fear? That is one. Is it so disturbing? So if you say yes, we have a pet and it's difficult, well, I know it does get tough. So then you have to, again, the rooming in thing has to come in, and you'll find that the animal takes far better to the child. We may feel that the child is afraid of the animal, but once the child gets close to the animal, I have seen innumerable children and adolescents with autism who do so well with a pet. And in fact, the pet also doesn't do anything to them. I mean, we had a child, I think, who was 4.5. She would just lift the jaw of the dog or play with the dog, and the dog would never do anything to her. I mean, and it was supposed to be a very ferocious dog. And the reason was probably, I don't know, there was some connect that the two had, and the animal sensed that, this girl doesn't mean harm. And, there was some kind of a connect. So sometimes I think animal fears can be dealt with if they have to, but if you feel it's not interfering too much in their life, I think I wouldn't really, worry.
Just
Or,
one
yeah.
perspective that I will like to bring here is, sir, like what happens, like even in cities like Mumbai, when you go out, okay, there are a lot of street dogs. And when the child goes out and the child has a dog fear, and he or she sees a street dog, her behavior completely changes.
True.
And it's not uncommon to find street dogs in Mumbai.
True.
So
Yeah. So then maybe,
yeah.
you will have to work from a desensitization perspective. Keep a dog in the clinic, or keep the child sitting next to a dog that's tied up. Maybe first a little away, then a little closer, then have a friendly dog, then have the two interact. Maybe start with a smaller dog and then move to a bigger dog. I mean, with a pup first and then move to a bigger dog. So those kind of things will probably have to be sort of looked at.
Right. Desensitization does make sense.
Yes,
So
yes.
parent, whoever asked this question, desensitization is something you can try. You can try that with your child. So moving on to the next question. Sir, this is something fairly new. Not many people know. Even I would like to know much about it. So we hear a lot about autism communes and gated communities for, ASD individuals. Can you please help us understand the concept?
Well, this is something that I have seen abroad and in Europe, that people have come up with the concept that adults with autism spectrum particularly, should live in communities where they are understood. So like we now have buildings in Bombay which are so-called gated communities, where you stay inside and you have a lot of things available inside. I mean, so the thing is, so that their social skills, so that their social anxiety doesn't get affected if they have to move out. So these are smaller communities, maybe families to the tune of 20 families, 30 families, not large families, but they stay in a small area. They have staff that are trained to handle children with autism spectrum. So the maid servants are trained, the other staff are trained, the watchman is trained, and these people can move freely. Plus, children and adults with autism spectrum can mingle inside the community. They can, they have parents who understand each other. There's a support group facility for the parents. But of course, it's a far-fetched idea when we look at India and Bombay, but it's something that's, coming in. Like you have retirement homes. Probably this is something that will come in the long run. Maybe parents in India will take the initiative and start something like this. And this is something which we already have parents who are, who have started adult homes, and you have parents who are running homes wherein you have adult homes for the child and you have old age home for the parent in the same complex, so that they can continue to stay with the child as the child ages and they age. So I think a similar facility will probably come in, wherein children with autism can mingle, and if they even get married, they'll probably stay there and they'll be in a safer environment. I mean, that's the whole thought.
Right. Yes, sir. So there's another question from the audience. The parent says, or the brother says, my brother is 19 years old. He becomes hyper frequently and hurts himself by biting and hitting on his head by hands. Can you please tell me some way to control his behavior?
Well, I think biting or hitting is a part of self-injurious behavior that we see in autism, and they would need a good occupational therapist to sort of handle it. And even if he's a 99-year-old, it's all the more reason why you need a good occupational therapist who can manage that. OT sessions haven't been very regular in the pandemic, and now probably offline sessions will happen. In very extreme cases, yes, we do look at little medical help because they also benefit the OT sessions. They at the same time work at a brain-based level. So that's something that could also be looked at. Someone has, I'm just going to, move up. I think when I moved up in the chat, there was someone who asked about uh, 7-year-old child who was having, yes, is on medication for the past 2 years, which is on seizure medication, and that led to ADD. Well, seizure medications do not normally lead to ADD. I think ADHD and epilepsy coexist in a lot of children with autism. And what's very important is that they've asked me whether the person would become normal after medications are stopped. So medication for epilepsy would continue for at least 5 years. If the child is free from epilepsy the last 5 years, then probably we could look at tapering, or otherwise it'll continue. ADHD medication at least 2 or 3 years, and if the child is better, then we could look at tapering. Of course, behavioral interventions will continue, but when you look at normalcy, we primarily mean there's no fits happening. That, according to me, would be normalcy. So that's something there. And there's one question, I think, by Prem Johnson, that he has a 9-year-old daughter who does self-laughing,
Right.
and makes us embarrassed. Now, there are two aspects to this. Laughing to the self, is a very common symptom. And so if that happens, you need to find out what is the stimulus. Is there specific things that make the child laugh, or are there other things that make the child laugh? Or is it just that the child is engaging in it as a stimulation? If the child is engaging in it as a stimulation, then you need to probably, get a good autist and a speech therapist to work combined with the child. The second aspect of the question is, it makes us embarrassed. So the reason is, I'm not at all saying you won't feel embarrassed. Any parent would feel embarrassed, and I totally understand what you're going through. But what's also very important is that as parents, we have to understand that rather than feel embarrassed, let's explain to people that the child has a problem, and that's why the child is probably doing this. I remember I went once for somebody's wedding function, and they had a child with autism that came there, and the child was laughing. And uh, so somebody passed a comment ki, and I'm sorry to use the word, but they used the word that pagal bachcha aa gaya hai, dekho kaise has raha hai. And there's some comment which was passed, and I know this mother who very very strongly got up and told that lady ki wo pagal nahi hai, usko autism hai, aap jante bhi hai ki autism kya hai. And she explained to him that this is autism, aapko jab hoga ya aapke koi bacche ko hoga to aapko samjhega, abhi aap pagal bolne ke pehle samjhiye. And the thing is, of course, I mean, I didn't intervene because I didn't need to intervene. The mother had done the job herself. But the thing is, so at times we have to let go of our inhibitions as parents also. I know it's very difficult. I mean, I'm not at all saying it's easy. It's very difficult. I will share another incident. I was traveling by air to Delhi, and they had a child who had autism on the flight. And the child, once, of course, was put in a seat belt. The child wasn't happy. The moment the plane took off, the child started walking in the corridor. And I had this one lady next to me, and she was, I think, a 50-year-old Punjabi lady who told me कि ऐसे बच्चों को तो प्लेन पे अलाउ ही नहीं करना चाहिए. So I told her, आंटी एक काम करो, उसको यहाँ भेज दीजिए ना, आप उसके सीट पे जाके भेज रही. I said वो ज्यादा अच्छा होगा. So she said, I said आप बहुत बात कर रहे हैं, वो तो बात भी नहीं कर रहा है, अच्छा है, वो शांत है. So the thing is, so she got upset. She said that हाँ मैं अभी उसको भेजती हूँ. So I said, yeah, you send that boy's father and him here, and you and your husband shift behind if it is worrying you so much. So the father came with the boy and sat next to me, and I of course just told them I'm a doctor and I understand that he's this way. Then what happened was, after some time, the child began to hold one of my fingers for whatever reason, and he began to play with it. And I said, as long as he doesn't twist it or break it or does anything that way, it's fine. And the father told me, no, he just holds strangers' fingers because it gives him comfort. So I said, it's absolutely fine. It's okay. Let him hold my finger. And probably, I mean, I was in a suit. So he put his head on my shoulder and went off to sleep. And the father told me, how did he go off to sleep? So I told him, it's Raymond. It feels like magic. Aapne wo ad dekha hai? I said, to bacha so gaya. So I said, it's very normal. So he went off to sleep. He got up only when we landed, and he just left my finger and walked off as though he didn't even know me, who I was. So what I'm trying to convey here is sometimes, we have to understand their perspective. We can't get upset and we can't get, so as parents, the worst thing we do is we feel embarrassed. It does happen, ki, Arey, aise ho gaya. Like I remember I have children who come to my clinic, they'll pick up something from my table and throw it. And the parent is, we're very sorry, we're very sorry. And I said, I'm not affected. Why are you all getting affected? It's absolutely fine. They want him to sit still during my clinic. It's not going to happen. So I said, don't, it's, I said, wo agar chupchap baithta, अच्छे से baithta, मेरे पास नहीं आते. So it's absolutely fine. Don't worry at all. Yeah.
Sir, this is one question which, I think you would really make a lot of justice to this. And the very important question, not many people talk about it. So Kanchan has this question. She says, my son is 8 years and he's getting a pubic hair near the genitals.
Yeah.
When it is good to explain about his physical change, and some hair is long and disturbing too to him. So he's saying, why this hair? What to do? Kindly guide, sir.
Yeah. So what you have to do is, I mean, in such cases, show him a video of a man shaving, or if you have anyone in the house who shaves, show him and say that like you get hair on your face, you get hair even below, you get hair in the arms, and tell him that when these hair grow, it is to be shaved. And the thing is that it's better that while the hair is smaller and slightly longer now, as you're saying, shave it off once, see how fast it comes back. If you need to sort of, shave it off in regular intervals, do that. A lot of parents say the child doesn't cooperate. Well, you can ask any skin specialist. There are certain creams available, which if you apply, at least 80% of the hair just comes out. You don't have to even shave. And then, the rest can be easily removed with a shaver with little help or whatever. And I always tell people that please use it's a little expensive shaver, but use a Gillette Mac shaver. It's far more safer. You don't cut the child. The blades are not as sharp as our normal twin blade shavers. Plus, of course, you will have to assist. I mean, a lot of parents tell me, how is it that, we're going to assist? But I think the father will have to take the lead in this and probably help. If not the father, then if it's a single parent, then if there's another male member available. In some cases, I've even had mothers do it. So I won't say that, that's not the thing. But at 8, it's possible. Maybe once he's older, the mother will have to look at some help, to probably manage this aspect. But it's definitely manageable.
Right. Sir, the next question from the list is, which I'm just scanning through a couple of questions. So parent says, my 3.5-year-old son wants to get in the lift as soon as the lift opens and exit the lift when it opens for someone who is coming in or going out. And he becomes very aggressive if we don't agree.
Well, I think, what you have to do is there are two things. If you find that, these lift behaviors are sometimes which can be disruptive and can, hamper his day-to-day activity. So in such cases, we have to just tell them, we did a very simple thing with, one of the kids who had similar issues, that we said the lift is not working. We put we called the lift guy and said that the lift won't go to his floor, whatever happens. And we said that you'll also put a big sign that lift is not working outside the lift in your house. Now, luckily, they stayed on the second floor. So going up and down wasn't so much of a problem. But of course, if you're on the higher floor, I know it does become a bit of a difficulty. But we also, I mean, in a 3.5-year-old child, we also had a lift man there who had to tell the child, no, you can't keep doing this. So sometimes a little bit of strictness in that manner worked when he doesn't listen to the parent. So that is something which we did.
Right. Right. And so this is the next question from, which we had collected. So this is very important. We have talked about teenage, we have talked about life beyond that. Now, many of them, they want to know, can an individual with autism be a good parent and have emotions? So emotions you have definitely answered, but can an individual with ASD be a good parent, sir?
Well, I think I always say that it's very difficult to define a good parent. So it's, there is no clear definition. So yes, he may be a little emotionally detached. He may not play with the baby too much. He may not, like the baby too much. But at the same time, I mean, when you probably have married an individual who's autistic and he's going to be the father of a child, you're probably dealing with two babies, one older and one younger in the house. So you have to probably manage, and you make both of them sit together, both of them be together, they'll probably sit. And I don't think he will also learn to play with the baby once the baby starts socially interacting with him, because he feels less challenged by the baby than he feels with other individuals. Also, he does know the baby is his own and he's the father. So obviously, he will develop those emotions. It's very funny that they may not like to socially mingle with others, but their impulses as a father come in very naturally. And the same goes for being a mother. It comes in very, very naturally. Yes, we've had parents with mothers of who are autistic, who have created a huge hue and cry because they wouldn't cooperate for a normal delivery. So we've had to just do a cesarean. There was no option left, because that was a safer way. Because if they don't push and they don't cooperate, and then it's very difficult at that point of time. You don't want the baby to get upset. So the only way is do a cesarean. It's a safer way out. And they may not cooperate for a gynec examination. They may not cooperate for a sonography. I mean, all those are problems that
Right.
do happen. But so managing the autistic, the mother who's autistic and pregnant is a totally different a difficult task altogether, versus delivery and post delivery. They may not cooperate for breastfeeding. I've had a mother who didn't breastfeed because of sensory issues.
Yes.
The breastfeeding would cause a lot of sensory upheaval. It was not that she didn't want to breastfeed, but the sensory upheaval was there. So we actually, for the first 4 5 months, 6 months, had to just pump out the milk, put it in a bottle and give it to the child. There was no other way out. But she wouldn't cooperate at times for the pumping out also. So those things were there. But somehow, I mean, her parents managed, the husband managed her. So things do happen. So these are difficulties that we face.
Right. So there's another interesting a question coming up, and I think everybody would benefit from this. So a parent is asking how and when to have, you are different, you are autistic, conversations with a kid or adolescent. What's the right time to tell your child?
Well, I think it's always prudent that you find out how much he knows. Ask him what he knows and find out whether he's just using words from here and there, or does he actually know. So, and if you find he has some knowledge, ask him about it. Try and find out through his actions, through his knowledge, what does he know, and then I think decide based on that. But yes, it's a little difficult when we do uh, uh, sex education for children with autism, because the worst, uh, I won't use the word worst, I'll say the difficult part is they pick up words, and they keep repeating those words. So now there's no way I could do sex education without using words that have a sexual connotation. So I mean, uh, on a very serious note, like we've had children who the whole day after the sex education class, have been going on intercourse, and the teachers were getting hassled in the class because that was a word they picked up from the session. I mean, there was another child that picked up the word penis from the session and went on saying that again and again. Now, that was part of their normal method of speaking, but it was a word which we put into them. It was not that they were saying that word prior to that. So these things get a little difficult. So you have to take it easy, and don't give them too much information too fast, and at the same time go with the flow based on how they feel.
Right, right. And sir, another parent who has a mother who has a son of 18 years, she says that, he's 18 years, so he touches my palm every day. And, I tell him, like, it's mama, I know it's okay, but I want to break it.
Well, you have to then find out whether he's seeing anything on television which is violent, whether he's seeing any videos which are violent, whether he's seeing anything that is making him think aggressive, and probably try and look at why he wants to probably get into that kind of a mood. If you're able to find that out, fair enough. But otherwise, maybe a counselor who is well versed with individuals with ASD could probably have a chat with him and try and find out, the reason behind this kind of, a method which is there. There's one question which has come directly to me, and that is that there's a psychologist who's written in that she's seen a couple of adolescents touching their genitals again and again and putting their hands inside their pants, and she feels that should we allow them to do it, not do it, because there must be some sensation they're experiencing. Well, to answer that, yes, they do experience a sensation that everyone experiences. So it's not that there's anything new in what they're experiencing. Should we allow them to do it? Well, it's a very natural phenomenon. So we have to allow things to happen, but we can allow them to decide when, where, how it will happen. So you'll have to probably tell them that it can't happen in the classroom, it can't happen in the corridor, it can't happen in the hall, it can't happen in the kitchen. They can go into the bathroom and probably do whatever they need to do. And well, just a few things there is, in my experience, any child with a lot of excessive genital touching, scratching, rubbing, always rule out fungal infection, because it's very common in the Indian scenario, and many children with autistic spectrum are not very cooperative while bathing. So they don't allow soap to be applied or those body parts to be scrubbed, and they very often even sometimes don't allow a change of underwear very easily. They have all sorts of small I would say obsessions that they hold on to. So sometimes we've seen many children who keep rubbing the genitals, and it's not even sexual, it's only fungal infection, and little skin help and skin ointment and all that, and they are much better. We also, another thing, also remember that a lot of children who rub their genitals probably need vibratory and proprioceptive occupational therapy, which helps them in a very big way. It may not necessarily be sexual in nature. It's the sensation that they like. They do not understand that it's sexual, very often. So that's something which we need to sort of understand as well.
Great. Sir, so we have a couple more questions, but we are coming towards the end of the program. And I think, sir, you've covered a lot of areas, which even I as a therapist came to know so many things. But there is one thing, sir, now we are ending towards the session. A parent has said, sir, can you share any stories of early intervention or any adult in India leading an independent life? Either one, you can pick.
Well, if you ask me, I have seen many adults who, when I met them, I feel they probably have autism spectrum or mild Asperger's, as we would call earlier in the olden days. Now we don't use the word Asperger's anymore. But the thing is, what I do feel is maybe they were not detected. I sometimes, a very important point that I want to leave you with is that, do you think if you detect autism spectrum, let's say I diagnose a child with autism spectrum, does that already make us take 2 steps back and think, Arey, iska itna nahi ho paega because he has autism spectrum. So we don't push that child, beyond a certain limit because we think there is a disability. Sometimes I feel the label itself, makes you doesn't allow you to stretch the rubber band as much as you want, so then automatically what you're going to catapult isn't going to go as far as you probably want it to go. But if you do allow it, it will. So that's one thing. The other thing that also happens is that I have seen a lot of them being independent in the form of bathing, brushing, looking after themselves, going to the market, doing all sorts of things pretty independently. But at the same time, they do need supervision. I won't deny that. They would need supervision even if it is at a distance. But yes, they would need supervision. But what's also very important to understand is that you need to have more awareness. I always remember people, I think even today, if you go on the road and catch random people and ask them what is depression, everyone knows what is depression. Yes. But if you ask them what's autism, I'm very sure there'll be some who say, it's something to do with children who are retarded. That's a very common thing that many people will answer you, but they may not know what autism is. So awareness about autism is still very poor, if you ask me. And awareness of the fact that you can have a number of autistic children with normal IQ is something which is still not, people are not very well aware about it. I always say this, that autism has three categories: one with low IQ, one with a normal IQ, and one with a high IQ. And the normal IQ and high IQ group are the ones which, of course, we will focus on. Not that we neglect the group with low IQ, but these are the ones that can achieve things otherwise. So we, have to work more with this group.
Right. Sir, so there are still questions that are unanswered, but I think you've covered a lot, and definitely we can plan out some next time. We can plan out for the session, another webinar, something
With a
like
bigger
this.
Zoom.
With a bigger Zoom,
So,
yes.
yes.
Yes. Sir, I had a personal question, if
Yes.
I can ask.
Yes.
Sir, so I deal with early intervention, and I continue till the mid school. Now, even as an educator, I also have the anxiety that I am taking them to a particular level. What after that? What after like a regular life, what we consider a typical, a neurotypical child, what can be for them beyond that, sir, in terms of education? Yeah.
See, I always, I will answer that to you from two perspectives. One as a special educator. Now let's say you're giving tuitions to a 10th standard child, and the child does very well and gets 95%. You obviously can't be worried whether the child will do well in the 12th or not. You've done your job. Now it's up to other people to take over from there.
Right.
So you've done your job the best you could till the child was in primary or 5th standard. Now abhi wo 10th kar payega ki nahi, abhi 5th standard teacher can't worry. You've given your best to your 5th standard class. So you have to just look at it that children have come to you, they've grown out of you, and now they're going to go and sort of go ahead.
Right.
So that's important. Another very important facet is that I'm also going to say is that we also have to realize that probably you need to develop a group of people who can take over from you. That okay, post the age of 12, I need to have sound individuals who can then manage them, who you could refer the parents to, so that the
Right.
work done by you is not undone or left where it was. So that's something that you would have to look at. I'm going to just quickly answer two things. One is,
Yes.
someone has asked me about a child who gets angry. The child has fits and gets angry, and he wants me to answer in Hindi. He's directly asked me the question
Sure.
on personal chat. तो पहले तो फिट की बीमारी जो होती है, उसमें गुस्सा आना स्वाभाविक है, उसमें चिल्लाना, चीखना, मारना स्वाभाविक है. उसकी फिट की दवाइयां देखनी पड़ेगी, कहीं इस दवाइयों की साइड इफेक्ट्स तो नहीं हो रही है. उसके अलावा अगर ज्यादा मारकाट है, ज्यादा चिल्लाना है, तो थोड़ी दवाइयां उसकी एडजस्ट करनी होगी, और ये ठीक हो सकता है. तो आपके अगर फिट के डॉक्टर है तो उनसे संपर्क कीजिए, उनसे बात कीजिए, उनसे विचार विमर्श कीजिए. वहां आपके घर के पास कोई साइकाइट्रिस्ट है तो वहां दिखाइए. इट्स डेफिनेटली पॉसिबल कि ये ठीक हो सकता है. lot of people have asked me about stem cells and autism and my view, and well, I'm not a stem cell expert, so at the outset I always say that my arguments with stem cell professionals have been only two. One is, if you advise stem cell therapy, then you should give stem cell therapy and leave the child for the next 5 years, and then I will know whether stem cell therapy works. You don't do stem cell therapy and then tell me to do OT, remedial, speech, everything for the next 5 years, and then tell me, see, with stem cell he's progressed so much. No, it doesn't happen that way. So I believe if an intervention has to work, it has to work on its own. I don't believe stem cell, personally don't believe stem cell has a role in autism. Well, there'll be a lot of people unhappy if they see this recording, but yes, it's a fact. It doesn't work. It works very well in muscular dystrophy. It works very well in disorders where there is genetically certain parts of the body which are damaged, and you need stem cells to go and replace those parts. In autism, you don't have a brain which is damaged. You have a brain that has chemicals which are up and down. You have a brain where neuronal circuits are damaged. My key question is, how does your stem cell know where to go? Simple. I mean, there is no damage. So the stem cell doesn't know that this is the area where there's leakage and I need to go and plaster it. Where is it going to go and act? The stem cell does not know, how is it going to probably work. So it's very, very difficult for stem cell to work. And particularly if you're going to give him OT, remedial, speech, he's going to improve anyway. I mean, so, and then, you can't give the credit to stem cell after that. I mean, so that's something which I would say. I would rather say, do not put in lakhs and lakhs of rupees into stem cells. Keep that money, saved for your child's future education, keep that saved for his OT, remedial, speech, multiple other things you have to do over the years. It works a lot better, that way. A long time ago, I've had a very reputed stem cell clinic offer me commission to refer children, for stem cells, commission to the tune of 50,000 per child. So, you can imagine how, I don't have any qualms in admitting it because I don't work with commission. So I know. So, and they told me that you start a center in Bandra, there are people who are paying and they'll come and this and that, and stem cell is safe. And the only thing good about stem cell is there are no side effects. I can tell you that much because it's your own cells you're putting into your own body. So there's no side effects that can happen, but there are no effects either. So, the only thing I tell parents is kuch galat nahi hoga. Sahi hoga ki nahi, mujhe nahi malum hai. It is that way. So the procedure is safe, but we really don't know how it works. We're still at a very, very nascent stage. I tell stem cell people, we need to tag those stem cells with radioactive material, see where they go in the brain, know where they are, know whether after 5 years they are still there, not there, whether they become neurons. There's no way you're going to probably be able to tell me, what happened. So it doesn't really work that way.
Right, sir. So it's already 5:40.
Yes.
And thank you so much for your time, sir. And the messages that have been pouring in from parents, and I'm reading that they are very, very thankful to you for the kind of insight you have provided them and the examples. They are very touched and moved by the examples that you shared. So thank you so much.
No, but more than anything, I'm thankful that, you agreed to do this. I would have not done this if you didn't agree to host the program. So, I put
thank you, sir.
Yes. So that's more important. I think if she wasn't hosting the program and coordinating and getting all of you here, I wouldn't have come. So it's, I would put it that way. So a lot of credit does go to her as well. Yes.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words. And thank you so much, parents, for being so patient and, extending your time. And you all can log off now. So
we will send all of you the recording so you all
Yes.
can disseminate it to even more people. And probably in the future, we'll have part 2, 3, 4 of this, but maybe focusing on specific topics. So it will be a lot more easier then for you all to think and, come in.
Definitely, sir.
Yes.
We all will be looking for more. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Have a
ma'am.
good
Thank
evening.
you, sir.
Yes,
Bye.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.